And we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for those who are tuning in. As usual, my name is Chris Webb. I'm an employability advisor with Sheffield Hallam University and a registered career development professional. And I'm here as always with my co-host, MeetSabiha. So Sabir, very good day to you. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Chris. I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. My name is MeetSabiha. I work in 12 countries as a RCDP, and I specialize in working with young people who are looking to transform their career potential, as well as creator of the 4.0 Class Academy, which works with upskilling career guidance counselors, helping them deliver powerful career support for students. And I want to encourage everybody who's watching us live today right now is that your feedback, comments, thumbs up, smiley faces are all welcome. So if you can hear us and you can see us, please do give us a like in the comments section below. Now, today's show is going to be a little bit different because our expert guest is Chris, because we're going to be talking and focusing on HE. And I couldn't think of anyone better to share with us anecdotal case studies and experiences, as well as tips of how we can deal with the challenges that are being currently faced by our fellow practitioners. So Chris, what's your, as always, we always ask our guests for a feel-good story and one interesting fact that perhaps other members don't know about yourself, Chris. So what's your feel-good story for this week?
So feel-good story for this week is, well, I'm not sure how long this will last, but I actually coach youth-level American football. So that's kind of under 13s. And over the past sort of 4 or 5 weeks, we've finally been allowed to kind of have people back to training. And so that's been really nice. So the sort of kids have been really excited by kind of getting back into that. And we've started to build stuff up again. So that's been really nice. Whether that will continue, obviously, we're at the whim of kind of local lockdowns and things like that. But that's been really nice. It's something that I do outside of my kind of day-to-day work, which I think really helps with all aspects of my professional life as well. And so it's been really nice to see something positive there.
I love that, Chris, that you've picked a story that isn't particularly necessarily directed to who we are as professionals. But as you mentioned, our physical and mental well-being is so important as career practitioners, because when we feel good and we look good and we feel happy both in our minds and our bodies, it allows us to do the work that we're really passionate about. So that brings me on to what's an interesting fact that perhaps, many of the members know you, have come across you, but something that perhaps they don't know about you. What secrets are you going to reveal for us today, Chris?
Yeah, probably not that much of a secret because you could find it on my LinkedIn profile. But I used to teach English as a foreign language. So I worked abroad. I worked in Vietnam and Japan over a 2-year period. And that is probably been one of the most kind of formative experiences, really, of my entire career, that wasn't necessarily connected to careers, but was just absolutely fascinating in terms of living in 2 completely different countries and really kind of, I suppose, like going native, really living properly in those countries and becoming part of those countries and the kind of culture there. And one of the things that you can also find on YouTube, if you can be bothered to view it, is I used to teach public school classes in Vietnam. So these were classes of about 50, 60 kids, all in kind of rows of wooden desks. And there's actually a training video that they used to show to some of the trainee teachers who work for the organisation that I train with, which is me in a class full of about sort of 60 kids, mic'd up and cameraed up, teaching this hour-long kind of public school lesson, which is mostly just kind of shouting words, call and response, and getting people to repeat them, running up and slapping the blackboard, that sort of thing. And it's quite an interesting one. So it sort of gives you an idea of where I got some of my presentation skills from.
Oh, fabulous, Chris. Now, see, here's a funny thing. I've known you for years and I didn't know this about you. So even I've learned something new and interesting about you today. And as you say, these are experiences that we can look back on in years to come. And as much as you might kind of cringe at the presentation delivery and even the sort of the clothing that you were wearing, it's a great sort of journey, isn't it, about where you've been and how that's informed you as a career practitioner. And speaking of sort of career practitioners, so I want to go on to our feel-good story for today, where we showcase and we invite members. So please continue to nominate either yourself or another member who you recognize for outstanding or inspirational and creative out-of-the-box approach to their work. And I want everyone to join us today. And as always, you can clap in the box with us. Or if you're watching live, emojis, drop them into the comments below. But I know also as well that many of you watch the replay. And so if that is the case, please don't feel that you can't join in. Please do join in and recognize our feel-good story for today. And this week's nomination winner is our president, the CDI president, Dave Cordell. Now, Dave brings 18 years of experience as a career development professional and has a passion for our profession backed by a personal mission to get the skills and confidence to define and create success into the hands of as many people as possible. He has experience of working with adults across a wide range of professionals at all levels and at all stages of their careers. Now, in his role as president, he is looking for opportunities to promote the CDI more widely and especially to promote an understanding within the business community, individuals and the educational system of the huge benefits of employing properly qualified and accredited career professionals. Now, we're really fortunate that we're going to be having Dave coming on one of our shows in a few months' time. So if you have any questions for our president, or perhaps you want to connect with him and you want to learn more about what it means to be president of the CDI, please, you can put some comments in for today and we can take them and we can make sure that we get those questions put to Dave. But also, you can start thinking about who is our president and how can our president support you and guide you as a fellow member. Now,
just to add to that as well, Sabit, sorry, I was really, again, Dave's been involved in a lot of work with the CDI, but I think particularly those who are watching on this is kind of Facebook group. A lot of the stuff around the kind of hashtags that we've been using, this particular group, and actually getting this show established and getting this show supported, Dave has been behind an awful lot of that. So we really have to say, thank you for him and well deserving of the shout out.
Thank you, Chris. Now, speaking of our topic for today, we're going to jump right into them. We're going to be discussing what will career information advice and guidance look like in the HE sector this academic year. So, Chris, now we've heard in the past months from Chris Target and John Morrison regarding what career guidance information and guidance delivery looks like for them within the secondary education and FE sector retrospectively. Now, if you've missed any of these shows, please do check out the replay. It's in the group. And today we're going to be focusing on HE career services at the start of the new academic year. So tell us a little bit about what's happening, Chris, for you as a HE practitioner.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. I suppose I have to kind of start it with the caveat that the situation may be different across different HE providers. So I think one of the key things that I'll sort of revisit a little bit later is not dissimilar in a way to schools and colleges, but perhaps a little bit more so because of the fact that there isn't one standardized approach. So we know that obviously schools are having to be back at the moment. Schools aren't independently able to take decisions to close down or perhaps vary the way they're doing things quite as easily. Whereas in HE, that there is a bit of difference across the board. And we saw that with Bolton University early on in the summer, immediately saying we are definitely going to have people back on campus. We put all of these steps in place. So, for example, they were offering bike rental for any of their commuter students. It was, lots of different things that they put in place. Whereas other universities, like, for example, Cambridge, were saying, no physical lectures at all for the whole of 2020-21. So it could be a different, position across the piece. But generally, from talking to HE Career Services and from my sort of point of view, we've basically been told that realistically, there's not going to be an awful lot of physical work for us this year. Pretty much everything has transitioned from March, April onwards to online delivery. We've obviously been delivering all over the summer because although some of the universities, obviously the students might not be there, we're typically doing a lot of work with graduates. We're still doing work with students that might be looking to access our services, maybe accessing summer internships, thinking about placements for next year, all this sort of thing. And indeed students who are transitioning out of university or kind of moving on to postgrad study. So we've kind of had quite a bit of time to get used to this sort of new normal and adapt kind of the way that we're delivering. So a lot of stuff's been on Zoom, but also lots of other platforms have kind of been adopted as well. So there's been a lot of use of things like MS Teams, for example, at the university I work at. A lot of other universities are using that too. And also really just making sure that I suppose there's a little bit more of a digital first approach. So we've seen quite a lot of university career services adapting their websites or utilising students in terms of, I suppose kind of like the content they produce. So more social media, more blogging. I've just seen a comment on the thread from Gina Whitaker as well about.
I was just about to come to you, Chris, on that one.
I'll feed in on that. Yeah. In terms of virtual appointments, yeah, absolutely. So from the very beginning, from kind of March, April, everything was done virtually. So all of our one-to-one appointments were on Zoom. We found that most kind of students tend to be happy to use Zoom. We've not had too many people who've requested phone calls instead. It's been very much, people seem to have been happy with Zoom. They can leave the camera off, they can put the camera on, but it's been really useful. One thing that we perhaps weren't prepared for is actually in terms of kind of some of the more transactional elements of careers appointments. So maybe if we're looking at kind of CVs, cover letters, interview preparation, the screen share ability has actually made it just as easy as having someone there in person. Maybe a little bit harder to kind of form rapport, but I think on a general level, it's still very practical. And actually, we get quite a lot of positive feedback about students conducting appointments through Zoom. So I think that's been kind of one of the good news stories, definitely. But a lot of changes this year. And again, one of the key ones is stuff that perhaps we think is more difficult to move virtually, like careers fairs, employer events. That's proving to be one of the big challenges, particularly around networking. So yeah, it's a different look, but I guess we've had a little bit more time to prepare for it than some places have.
Here's what I'm hearing from you, Chris, and what's coming through to me really loud and clear about what you're sharing about your experiences. And I completely agree with you that your experience within your establishment might be very different from other organizations. But what we're looking for here is themes and relatability. And I'm loving the fact that people like Gina are jumping into the comments. So thank you, everybody. Please do jump in if you have questions for Chris around whether it's delivering content, whether it's about challenges that they have faced as an institution and how they've solved them. You know, we really want to focus on solutions today, as well as, you know, dissecting the topic and exploring the topic as well, because we know it's ever changing. I mean, from week to week, you know, 1 minute people are allowed to congregate, and then the next minute the government is saying that they can't congregate. And, you know, as organizations, you're having to adapt. And that was what came through to me loud and clear, Chris, is that there seems to be a real communication across the board as an institution, and you're adapting to the changes and you're pivoting consistently. So yes,
I think what's interesting, coming back to what you were saying around some of the recent issues to do with kind of quarantines, is I think from a communication point of view, students, unfortunately, and quite rightly in a number of cases, feel that perhaps they've not had that communication. And sometimes that's from institutions, and sometimes it's from you know, the government downwards, in terms of feeling like they were encouraged to go back to university and now feeling like perhaps they're being penalised for doing so. And I think that's been kind of reflected to some extent in some of the engagement we've seen. So for a lot of university careers services, and you know, what's been great over the summer is we've been able to network with loads of university careers services we wouldn't have talked to normally until we went to conferences physically. So that's been quite nice. But a lot of the feedback we've had back is that initially there was really high levels of engagement with online workshops, events, perhaps because of the novelty, perhaps because, you know, it's something that was there when everything else was going on in the pandemic. But interestingly, for some career services, that probably hasn't held. And I know that, you know, we've had sort of peaks and troughs. And one thing I think that a lot of career services and universities in general are worried about this academic year is, what will the engagement be like after the start of the academic year? If, for example, we've got students who are having to stay inside, they've not got as much, you know, involvement with maybe societal activity, they can't maybe do as many part-time jobs as they could in previous years. What will that engagement be like, and will frustration set in? So I think there's a lot still to be uncovered probably over the next couple of months.
And Chris, I don't know, we're getting some questions coming through, but I just wanted to pick up on a point that you were just sort of sharing with us there about the, you know, student frustration and the anticipation, and obviously the peaks and troughs as well that you anticipate that you're going to see. What measures are you putting in place to ensure that, you know, I mean, we can't look, this is something that we cannot predict. No one predicted this. And so we're all learning, you know, live in the moment together. So what sort of ideas do you have as an individual practitioner, but also as an institution, to sort of address those issues that you've highlighted?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I mean, some of the stuff that we're doing has really been dictated by circumstance. So, for example, a lot of the live content that I would typically do for in-curriculum modules for engineering, maths and physics, who are the cohorts I work with most closely in my kind of curriculum role, alongside my central careers role, a lot of that's had to change to pre-recorded content. So we've had to look at, okay, well, what does that pre-recorded content look like? Breaking it down into kind of 15-minute bite-sized videos, you know, uploaded as YouTube links, closed caption, subtitles, so that, you know, we're trying to make it a bit more inclusive, a little bit snappier, and resources provided so that people can maybe access content in different ways. So if they prefer to read through PowerPoint slides, they can do that. If they prefer to watch a video, they can do that. And so I think it's kind of adapting the content in ways we haven't done before. But I think just the communication as well, just trying to ensure that we've got different forms of communication so that people can access things and that they're aware of kind of what's out there. So, for example, our website, our careers website at the university, that's just been adapted it's quite a bit more simplistic than it was before, which I think a lot of people were quite concerned about at the beginning. But I think it's been built with the idea of kind of choice architecture and the use of website platforms in mind. So it's quite, research based in terms of this is what's been fed back about how long people spend on websites, what information they're looking for, what keeps them on websites. And so I think that kind of approach, that digital first approach, a lot of people are going down that avenue and looking at, okay, bearing in mind that we know our students are going to be online, we're not going to have those physical interactions to start with. How do we create digital platforms that are really engaging to begin with? And that's where we're seeing kind of organizations like Handshake really coming to the fore. So they're US based, but a lot of UK universities are now signing up to their platform. I think they've got about 20,000 users now across the UK. And that's kind of based on mobile applications. It's based on kind of nudge theory. So again, getting the students sort of used to sort of things like networking, finding careers events, contacting employers, but in a way that's perhaps a little bit more aligned to how people might use apps normally. So I think there's quite a lot of digital innovation going on, but yeah, I would say certainly it's the communication side and making sure that people are aware of what's out there, particularly as we don't have the physical presence on campus at the moment.
Innovation, innovation, innovation. What I'm hearing from you that's coming through for me is as you're talking about the different ideas and how you've adopted and how you've pivoted and how you've changed your approach and where you're putting your focus on. It's all about innovation. It's all about, okay, we have this is how it's been done before. How can we now deliver in a brand new way, but is also engaging and accessible as well? And Gina sort of came back in again, asking a question about our pre-applicant center where I work provides career guidance, and we haven't yet been back yet. We are a new team and just finding our way with one-to-ones. And I would imagine that so many others are also resonating with this. And I know Chris, just before Chris and I came on live, we were just talking about this, and I was asking Chris, I was like, Chris, when are you physically going back into the office? And he was like, not until next year. So what would you add to what Gina's shared with us and your own experiences, Chris?
No, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely a learning process. So, I mean, we're finding, for example, that for some of the academic staff that we're working with, who, for example, they have to take their annual leave at a particular time of year. It's normally the summer. And then what seems to be happening is, obviously, we've had a bit longer to work with certain digital platforms. So in some senses, we're kind of ahead. We've had a bit more time. And so I think it's just important, again, we talked about it with John Morrison in our last episode. I think managing expectations is going to be really important this year because, not everyone's going to be up to the same stage in terms of kind of digital capability. And that's from a staff perspective and student perspective. And in terms of web accessibility and access to, fast internet and all those sort of things. And I think we have to remember to be supportive of people and not just assume that everyone is suddenly at the same speed, and that's within teams, within career services, and just generally across universities and other workplace settings as well. And I think it's if a lot of people are finding their way at the moment, both within kind of companies and within universities. So I think it's just reaching out to people that maybe have been and done it. That was something that we did quite a lot over the summer. Was if we knew that there was a university that were using a career service that were using particular forms of technology. So, for example, Northumberland did some really good, really kind of polished, well-edited YouTube sort of videos, 15-minute videos that they were putting out for graduates. And that was something we kind of took on board and haven't particularly aped it, but have kind of used some of the lessons from there in terms of sort of what we've been doing with the style of content and perhaps the length of content. So I think it's using what's out there, and really we found that people have been so supportive during this period because everyone feels to an extent in the same boat. So I think that's probably what I'd add on that point.
Another top tip that I'm hearing from you is collaboration. So what you're doing is you're not trying to go out there and reinvent the wheel. You're actually looking at other institutions where some people might consider them as competition. You're actually seeing them as, hey, who's doing what over where and how well are they doing it? And can we introduce either all of it or elements of it into our own practice so that we can also make sure that our students get an amazing service? Because we know it's going to be a challenging, it's going to be another challenging year. So aside from having to adapt to the changes brought on by COVID-19, what are some of the other key issues that HE Career Services are currently facing in relation to the work that they do, Chris?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is something I could probably talk about for a long time. So I'm trying to kind of condense it into a few different issues because there is an awful lot going on at the moment that would have been happening anyway within the HE sector. I think probably the most important thing to mention would be graduate outcomes. So that's something that's just kind of come in this year. This is data from 2018. So this is if anyone who's familiar with the Destination of Leavers of Higher Education survey, known as DELI, that was basically what was used to kind of determine how well universities were doing for students after they left. And again, I think all the usual arguments that we have with labour market information about it being quite simplistic. It was about, how many people were in work 6 months after leaving, their degree. What did that work look like? The graduate outcome survey is a little bit more nuanced, which is quite nice. So this is from the latest data set we've got from 2018. It came out in June this year. And it doesn't just look at whether people are in employment or highly skilled employment, which is sort of at a graduate professional level, but it also looks at kind of satisfaction. So, are the students 15 months after they finish their course, so it's a bit more longitudinal as well, are they satisfied with what they've, basically what they're doing at the moment? Do they feel it aligns with, their career goals? And do they feel that their degree had an impact? And actually, a lot of the data that came back was quite positive. I think they had about 86% said that they were kind of satisfied with what they were doing. They felt they were at a good point within their career. Around about 3/4 in total in sort of what they call highly skilled employment. So, employment linked to their degree level or to kind of graduate professions. But I think behind all of that, there's been a discourse that's probably, again, a bit like the sort of simplistic arguments around apprenticeships versus university and school leavers, what school leavers move on to. And there's a lot of stuff missing from that debate. So, I mean, for example, we saw with, basically when the government were talking about too many people going to universities, all this sort of thing, Michelle Donohan, all the stuff that came through in her speech, one of the big things that was missing was using that type of data to actually say, well, okay, arts graduates, for example, they're very rarely in highly skilled employment as much as economics graduates or engineering graduates. And of course, a lot of this data misses out on some of the kind of key caveats, which, people within sort of creative arts jobs or in performing arts jobs may do a number of different roles whilst they're looking at work. They may have more kind of freelance careers or portfolio careers. And I think, it's one of those things that still there's not a lot of understanding probably publicly when that data is shared, particularly by government ministers, that, what is it that makes a successful graduate career? Are we purely defining it on salary terms? Are we defining it on other things as well? And also looking, within 15 months, somebody may have had time to squeeze in a postgraduate degree. They may have had time to squeeze in, traveling, volunteering, a bunch of other things that will massively benefit them long term, but may not put them on a particular salary band, or a particular graduate level position. So I think it's certainly much more useful, the graduate outcomes data, than previous data has been. And it helps break things down at a course level and looks at previous kind of achievements. But it's one of those things that, again, within the HE career sector, much like is happening, to some extent with, neat figures in kind of schools and in colleges, we are kind of driven by that, and it drives quite a lot of the work that HE career services are sort of expected to do. So I think that's one of those challenges, is us kind of taking that data, contextualizing it, and not purely basing things on getting people into, must make sure you've got a graduate level job, but looking at how we can kind of advocate on behalf of, the students who do fill in that data, and actually say, well, what this is showing could be something different than what you're actually seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's about career satisfaction, Chris, isn't it? It's about understanding what it takes to create a fulfilling and joyful career. And yes, financial freedom is one aspect of that, but there are many other aspects of what that means. And obviously, each individual student will come to university with, a different life goal, different aspiration, and how do you sort of, create that satisfactory experience, both whilst you're in university, but also when you then leave and sort of venture into the world of work as well. And speaking of satisfaction, we've had a question come through from one of our live viewers, where the viewer's talking about the most frustrating thing as someone who's working with pre-university students is that it's hard to get admissions entry requirements other than those on the website. No one seems to be at the other end, or diverted phone, and admission staff are not responding to email. Now, I know obviously I haven't got context as to which universities that the person is reaching out to and is having this experience. So to put this question a little bit more wider and more inclusive, how can universities or how can organizations create more engaging and easy to access experiences for engagement for potentially new students that want to come along and become students, Chris?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. I mean, I think it does really depend on the university. So, I mean, I can only speak from our university's perspective in that, generally speaking, our admissions team and the experience that I've had with them are very good at getting back to people. But again, it does depend on the context. I think one thing that I always kind of suggest when I worked in sort of schools and colleges, I always suggested people try and get in touch with the departments themselves, because what you tend to find is if you get in touch with a lecturer or course academic, they can sometimes escalate that up and try and get a response, because they won't necessarily have the answer themselves. So it's kind of perhaps that kind of get around. I get quite a lot of emails myself from prospective students saying, if I come join this course, what would the career prospects be? What sort of support would I get? And so I think, generally speaking, career services is very happy to answer those questions. So I think it's sometimes kind of looking for a bit of a get around. That's definitely not the way it should be, but it's definitely something I'd recommend is, if it's not working, going through the admissions teams and phoning them, is, contacting another service at the university and explaining what it is that you're wanting to find out, and then perhaps having somebody advocate on your behalf, or the student's behalf, on that front. But I think it comes back to your question, Sabir, which is, what can universities do, more really to kind of improve that situation? I think it's something they're always looking at doing. It's not my area of expertise, so I wouldn't want to talk on behalf of kind of admissions staff. But I think certainly in terms of widening participation, and outreach teams in most universities now are always looking for kind of more innovative ways to work with schools. And I think, if you're connected through what was NCOP, and you're connected with your local teams. So we have, for example, HEP or HEPC in the South Yorkshire area. Connecting with those local teams can be quite useful, because they're very well connected around the university. But I think there's probably not an easy answer to that one. It's something that they're always trying to innovate when it comes to making themselves more accessible to pre-university students.
Well, I was just about to say to the user, sorry, I can't see your name on the comments thread right now, but if that was helpful, the tips that Chris has given you, and just to sort of add, because the few things that you've recommended and suggested to do, I would also go as well and say LinkedIn. I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn. So many professionals now, including lecturers, admission staff, actually now are active on LinkedIn. And that is definitely, it's one way that I recommend to my clients who are also pre-university students often as well, who are looking to, find information and as Chris said, go directly to the course head, and it means that there's a little bit of, research. You need to get on Google, get on LinkedIn, find out who are, find the names that you need to, the people that you want to connect with, and then take it that way. So I hope that was helpful. Give us further comments in the comment section if that was useful for you, or if you have any further questions. And in fact, we just got thanks, Chris. Yes. Really good points and really useful. So that's really good to know. So I'm just going to bring us on to our final question for today, Chris, before we head on to the summary and wrap up today's show. And this is about how you've worked both in secondary education and now obviously you've moved into FE. You've worked, an FE moving into HE careers work. What are your main reflections on this transition? And do you have any advice for any other career practitioners who might be watching and considering doing a similar move to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, I guess I'll go through sort of my reasons for kind of moving across within HE. And I think, we've talked about this, and there's been a lot of information and sort of opinion shared on this Facebook group as well about sort of issues perhaps around kind of secondary and FE, in terms of it being quite a mixed picture in terms of recognition of the quality of the work that people do, and recognition in terms of salary as well. I think we have to kind of be honest about that. And I know that there's some practitioners that I know working in schools and colleges who are really highly valued and remunerated what I feel is kind of appropriately, and have really good progression within their roles. And equally, we've all seen other job descriptions which are £17,000 a year for a careers leader and careers advisor, and we know that that's not right. I think with HE, one of the things is there is a little bit more of a definitive structure with the roles, and I think that's something that sometimes appeals to people, because you kind of know what you're going in at, what the structure of your job description is. You might not be kind of hammered with lots of additional responsibilities that perhaps a school or college could get you to do if they were short-staffed. But I think more than that, actually, it's kind of moving into any facet of career development, I think has to be about what motivates you. And I think one of the things that got me into the HE sector was actually about the chance to work on projects with lots of different groups and organisations. So, within the role I do at the moment, I have quite a lot of autonomy, which again is one of the big things for me. I won't do a career role unless it's got autonomy, because, it's just one of my big career drivers, one of my big career anchors. And so I think what I quite like about a lot of the roles in HE, but particularly the one I do at the moment, is, there's that opportunity to work not just with kind of employers and students as stakeholders, as sort of, effectively as partners, but also, working with different organisations across the university. So, for example, it might be like international experience team, working with international students, might be working with wellbeing team, disabled support. We're running some workshops in a couple of weeks' time on basically well-being in relation to career development. So kind of that idea of sort of bouncing back and resilience. And it's really nice to have those opportunities to kind of collaborate with those different teams. So that's a really nice, I would say, quite a nice reason to work within maybe larger organizations, larger environments like that. I think also that there's a lot of challenges which perhaps sometimes in roles I've done in the past, where I've been a careers advisor in schools, just purely because of the workload, I've not had time to get involved in. So, I mean, we talked a minute ago about kind of graduate outcomes and data and those type of things, but there's some really interesting challenges that are currently facing university career services across the country. So one is kind of peer-to-peer delivery. This is a model that's getting a lot of traction in terms of using students as partners to actually deliver elements of the careers experience, which is really interesting. There's a lot of work around integrated curriculum. So, people working directly with academics, very much like Gatsby Benchmark 4, but we're seeing lots of innovative ways that that's being done and bringing employers into the mix as well. And I think, universities tend to have a bit more funding and a bit more time and space to do that. It's done really well across a lot of schools and colleges, and it's done really well within universities. And it's one of those things where I think sharing examples of how that's done differently across the context is really valuable. But then also I think there's a lot of work at the moment around kind of progressive change in terms of race equity, in terms of gender equity. That there's a lot of stuff in there that's going on, a lot of challenges universities are facing and rightly sometimes being criticised for, that you can kind of get involved in those type of projects, often across the wider university body if you're a part of university careers service. So I think that there's quite a lot of benefits. It's certainly not something where, it's not the right environment for everyone. And I think a key takeaway as well is just the fact that it's very different from context to context. So, I mean, if you take the University of Liverpool, they have a careers studio where a lot of their frontline careers work is delivered by students, by career coaches. If you take somewhere like Hallam, for example, we probably do a lot more of that kind of work from individual careers practitioners, but that also includes elements of the guidance side as well. So it's quite a broad role, whereas in some other universities, it might be more curriculum facing. That might be the main focus of the role. So I think if you're potentially thinking about getting into HE career development, it's very much about looking at individual universities. What are their career services doing? They'll often have a really significant presence on social media, on LinkedIn, and on the university's website. And it's really worth exploring those different contexts, particularly because a lot of universities are remote working now, and many might well be recruiting people from beyond the kind of parameters that they might normally be at. And I suppose the final thing on that point, if you are kind of considering transitioning, is there's a really good CDI masterclass coming up with Paul Gaunt and Sarah Warburton from Coventry University, both lecturers in careers guidance. And that's available on the CDI, the new CDI events kind of tab on the website, which I know Sabir will talk about in a bit more detail. But
I'm glad that, Chris, that you mentioned that. Yeah, I'm glad, Chris, that you mentioned that, because I want to remind everybody, so each week now when we do the show, we're also creating a resources document. So everything that Chris has sort of spoken about today, all the different tips and hacks and the website recommendations, you can find that in the resources document that will be dropped by our fabulous Liz straight after the show as well. So you can access that and you can get access to all the information, including all the links as well. So to wrap up today's session, because we have now ran over a few minutes, Chris, to sort of summarize them, because I think when you talked about the transition that you've made, what you were talking about there is very much about identifying what is your values, your work values, your career values. It's almost like doing an audit yourself. We do it with our clients, and it's almost sitting down and doing your own career audit of what it is that you need and figuring out what those goals are. And then, as you say, going out into the world. And as you said, each university will have a very different approach and different opportunities in terms of the access and exposure to the different types of opportunities. So it's doing your homework and doing your research as a fellow practitioner to make sure that you align yourself with your work values and goals with the institute's work goals as well, and then finding that perfect mix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think exactly as you say, it's each university career service, not dissimilar to a school or college, but I think in some ways they've even got, because they tend to have slightly more resources, they tend to have even more of their own identity in terms of the strategy, the vision that they use. You can find all of that information usually on the website, on the university careers websites. And that kind of is quite helpful in terms of when you're considering, would I move into HE career development? And if so, where would I start? What organizations will I look at? I think checking out the institutions you might be interested in and seeing what they're doing, what the vision is for the work that they deliver, what type of students they work with, whether they've got a significant focus on international students, on widening participation, whether they're pushing towards progressive change. So, for example, one of our colleagues at the moment is leading progressive change across the directorate in relation to race equity. How do we deliver careers, and do we actually take into context some of the stuff around race equity, or is it based more on our own lived experience? So there are various career services doing really, really good work on all of these fronts. So I think it's definitely worth, exactly as you say, doing that research first and seeing how it aligns with your values.
Fabulous. So to summarize today's show then, Chris, what are your final thoughts that you want to leave with our viewers today?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gina's kind of made a good point there about sort of routes into the HE sector, and there are a number, and we're not going to have time to talk about today, but Gina's absolutely right. A lot of people do start off their career development careers, as it were, in HE, starting in kind of the widening participation teams, outreach teams. Some even start within student support, those type of things, and kind of work their way in. And it is much easier once you're in. Often when you're in a university to then apply for internal roles. What I would definitely suggest is just signposting people back to that CDI masterclass with Paul Gaunt and Sarah Warburton. It's all about transitioning into HE, so career development within HE. Paul and Sarah have got loads of experience. There's also a little bit that I've contributed to the workshop as well, which hopefully will be useful for people who sign up to it. So well worth signing up to that. I would say those are probably the key things I'd say moving forward.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure having you not only as my co-host today, but also our guest today as well. And we're going to jump right into now the news section. So I will be talking about the CDI news today. And then, Chris, I'll hand over to you to cover the more general news stories that we have today. So the CDI news, you should be receiving an email, a regular email from the CDI, which talks about the CDI news. Now, the latest one was sent out on the 16th of September. So please do check your inbox. And if for any reason you're not receiving these emails, please do reach out to the team so that they can make sure that you have the most latest and current information. As Chris mentioned, there's the new masterclass running in December by Paul and Sarah. You can find links on that and how to join it on the CDI website. And speaking of the CDI website, there has been a new development. I don't know about anybody else, but previously when you've been going on, you've been booking onto webinars or a digital bite session, or even joining one of the private practitioners groups, you may have found that it was a little bit cumbersome. Well, they've streamlined the whole process now to make it a lot more easy and straightforward. However, to use the system does require you to log into the members areas, which means that once you've completed one booking form, the system will remember your details. So it'll massively speed up the booking process. And who doesn't love a system that gets streamlined? So please do check that out. There's the National Careers Leaders Conference, which will be launched on October 1st. CDI is using a new bespoke conference platform, also used by the CIPD. There will be an interactive exhibition and amazing online networking features. Confirmed keynote speakers include Sir John Holman, Professor Tristan Hooley, who's launching the new careers framework, Emily Tanner, reporting on Careers Hub research, and Alice Cameron Bramford, Ofsted lead on careers guidance, and many more. So you can go again, it's all on the CDI website under the Careers Leader Conference. Also as well, there is work underway to create a series of CDI Academy courses focused on providing training for career advisors and support staff who are working with young people with SEND, both accredited and non-accredited routes. The new register development has now been launched. It's the new look directory, which will now be alphabetically listed. So in October, CDI will be relaunching, so just in a few days, the new UK Register of Career Development Professionals, introducing a new directory approach, which will enhance your visibility to members of the public searching for registered career development professionals. Now, the directory will make clear whether registrants are either registered career development professionals, qualified to either provide personal career guidance coaching, and those who are qualified to L6, L7, SCQF level 11 in career guidance development, or CDI deemed equivalent. And this is either a registered careers leader and those people who hold a level 6 or above qualification in careers leadership as well. And then finally, the diversity agenda for the CDI. The CDI has been considering the best way to respond to Black Lives Matter movement. And from September, we'll be implementing a strategy to raise awareness of the issues. The starting point will be an email to all members from the president and chief exec. Essentially, CDI will be prioritizing and looking to deepen the conversation around diversity and bias, and looking at how we address these topics in our professional practice. In addition to this, there is a new diversity resource webpage that has been launched and is being curated by Shamim. Her contact details you can find again on the website, and also it's been included in the resources document as well. So that's all for the CDI news. Over to you, Chris, now for the main news feed.
Thanks, Sabia. I'll keep it very brief. So I think just leading on from the diversity agenda comment you made there about the CDI, what I've listed on the main news feed, which we'll share on the resource document, is the Career Guidance for Social Justice blog, which hopefully a number of you have seen already, created by Tristan Hooley, Ronald Sultana and Reed Thompson. Some really interesting stuff in there in terms of kind of guest blogs about particular areas of how careers guidance is used in terms of advocacy for social justice. But there's some really interesting ones in there from Paul Gaunt, who is one of the names that we mentioned about the HE advice about, is it time for universal basic income? There's also some nice ones in there, and I'm just going to go back to make sure I've got the right person I'm talking about. Yeah, Tahira Majothi. So she's done ones on Black Lives Matters and HE careers, which again, really interesting about calls to action for how career practitioners can consider the BLM issue as part of their practice. So well worth having a look at those. In addition to that, I've got a number of articles which I won't go through in detail, but they're on the resource document, all about at the moment kind of tying in with what's happening around the new sort of part-time scheme or sending workers back part-time that Rishi Sunak's mentioned over the past couple of weeks, and the end of furlough. A lot of stuff around retraining and around skills, particularly digital skills. Particularly good article in there about accountancy and how that's changing in line with kind of Industry 4.0. So that's well worth reading. And as I say, the usual kind of labour market updates as well from the Institute for Student Employers and Prospects Illuminate, worth having a look at too. So all of that will be included in the resource documents, as well as the information about the new events tab for the CDI, as Sabia mentioned. Facebook user whose name I'm afraid I can't see. It was Paul Gaunt and Sarah Warburton from Coventry University that will be leading that transition into HE session. It will be on the CDI events page. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the news for today.
So I want to thank everyone, for those of you that joined us today and for participating in the comments and for all your support. I want to thank my co-host and special guest today, Chris, for joining us today. And as always, please, we are looking for our next Feel Good Story nomination. You can nominate yourself either for something that innovative that you are doing, or perhaps another colleague or member of the CDI that's also that is inspiring you in the work that you are doing. You can drop the nominations in the comments thread in this particular episode or any others as well. But till next time, thank you everybody, and we'll see you at the next show.
See you soon.